Just to start things off from what has transpired since this morning at 9 o'clock, as many of you know, the repopulation has started in the western portions of Sonoma County. That would be Zone 7 and a portion of Zone 8. The fire is now at 74,324 acres, 74324. We have increased and gained some containment. We're at 15% containment on those 74,000 plus acres. 90,000 structures are still threatened on this fire, and we can confirm that we now have 123 structures that have been destroyed. The damage inspection teams continue to go about their business and get those counts. We're up to 123 structures. Of that, 57 of them are residential homes. The others are either outbuildings or commercial structures. Additionally, we have confirmed 20 structures that have been damaged. 12 of those are residential homes, 7 other structures, and 1 commercial. So 20 damaged, 123 destroyed, and 90,000 still threatened. And finally, just about a half an hour ago, additional evacuation warnings were issued. So at the same time on the western side that we're repopulating, we are also calling for new evacuation warnings on the eastern side into Lake County. This is obviously a result of the change in weather conditions. That is referred to as Zone 31 in western Lake County. It is currently an evacuation warning. With that, I'll hand it over to our National Weather Service representative, Ryan Walburn.
Okay, good evening. So once again, the weather did turn somewhat favorable today. We had a little bit more temperate on the winds. The humidities remain incredibly dry. We're at about 9 or 10%, very low for this region. Looking ahead to tomorrow, we are under a red flag warning that goes into effect at 8 a.m. Once again, that's Tuesday morning and runs right through Wednesday afternoon. What that means is tomorrow the firefighters will be out there under red flag conditions. The setup for this event is a little bit different than what we saw this weekend. It is weaker, but nonetheless still very significant, thus the warning. Those northeast winds are going to come in off of Mount St. Helena and Cobb Mountain, move over the fire during the day tomorrow. Wind speeds 20 to 30 miles an hour, and as we get towards the afternoon, we will see some gusts 40 to 50 miles an hour as we head towards sunset. It's important to note that down along the 101 corridor, wind speeds will be lighter, so folks down there may not see those winds, but the strong winds will be up on the fire. So that's during the day Tuesday, and then the most critical period will be Tuesday night when we expect those winds to peak through midnight. Luckily, the winds will start to ease as we head into Wednesday, and we'll be looking forward to that next change in the weather. Thanks.
Speaking next is Fire Behavior Analyst Steve Vollmer.
Good evening. With the southwest winds we had today, it gave the firefighters a little bit of a break with the fire behavior, although as the winds began to shift around, that fire behavior did increase and has caused them some dramatic problems, producing some high fire intensity fire behavior again, as well as some additional medium range spotting. As the winds continue to change and get into that red flag warning northeast flow, it is going to increase that fire behavior to levels that we saw when this fire initially began. When the red flag warning initiates tomorrow, the firefighters will be working in those conditions. We are constantly updating the fire behavior forecast for the location of the fire, as well as for the temperatures and relative humidities that continue to drop in the areas. With those relative humidities dropping, we are still seeing that very receptible fuel bed be able to hold those spot fires, as well as to increase the rates of spread to critical and dangerous rates.
And for an operational update, Incident Commander Mike Blankenheim.
All right, good evening, everybody. So we did not have the big fire run today that we did have yesterday, and you're probably aware of that. However, that doesn't mean we didn't have a lot of active fire behavior today. I think like you heard Stephen talk about very dry conditions, but we didn't have the wind. So I'll give a quick recap on our actions today and what we're looking at for tomorrow.
Can you turn the mic on?
green light.
You're listening live to the update now from CAL FIRE. Some very important numbers to pass along. In fact, you can see some of the numbers there on the right side of your screen. Some of the key updates that we received: about 115 square miles have burned. The fire is 15% contained. But really, throughout all the numbers that you can read there, the biggest number is the 0, no fatalities and no persons reported missing, which is a huge difference than the fires that we've seen the last few years. The microphone problems have been resolved. Let's listen back in now to the CAL FIRE update.
As you heard over there, we did have some very dry conditions, and we did have some very active fire conditions today. So I'll give kind of a quick recap of our actions today and then what we're looking at for tomorrow. So up here in the Division Alpha, Papa Bravo area, up in Branch 1, up in the Mount St. Helena area, fire burned really actively throughout the afternoon, and we focused our attention with the aircraft up there today with both our large air tankers, and our very large air tankers, and the Type 1 helicopters, which are the big retardant dropping helicopters, doing everything we can to build line up in here to keep this from spreading down into Lake County. Down here in the southeastern part of it there, the fire made a hard run into that Shiloh Ridge area yesterday, and we were fairly successful today going direct on a lot of that fire with dozers, hand crews, and fire engines. However, I don't think we're done building line there, so we're going to continue working on that throughout the night, getting ready for the wind event that was described for tomorrow. The other thing we're doing for tomorrow is working on a pretty robust contingency plan for the communities of Calistoga and Middletown, preparing for that thing to come across the Lake County line if it were to do that.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for the operations? Chief Blankenheim. All right, not hearing any. Next, I'd like to introduce the Sonoma County Sheriff, Sheriff Essick.
Good evening. I'm going to provide a quick briefing on some of the repopulation efforts we have going on throughout the afternoon. Earlier today, we lifted the evacuation order for the West County, what we're calling Zone 7 and Zone 8. By reducing that evacuation order to an evacuation warning, we are permitting people back into the area. They are free to enter the area without identification or any permits. They're free to go home and check on their home. However, there is still a warning in this area, so that means that people should be prepared as they re-enter the area. If the fire were to change or we saw a drastic change in the weather conditions, they could still be subject to danger, and they could be subject to an elevation back to an evacuation order. However, at this time, we have weighed the risks with the weather forecast and the fire forecast, and we feel comfortable allowing people back into this area. I want to mention that as people return home to this area, that there are still some hazards out there. We did still have a high wind event, so they may encounter trees down on their roads or near their homes. There may be debris on the road, so we want people to stay vigilant as they're driving back into the area, checking on their properties, checking on their house. If conditions change and we do see an increase in weather or fire activity and we have to go back to an evacuation order, we will have deputies back in those neighborhoods using the high-low siren to evacuate again. However, like I said, we feel confident at this point that we can allow people back in safely and that risk has been mitigated. Lastly, I want to cover some of the patrols that we've been doing in the evacuation areas. We continue to have hundreds of deputies and peace officers from throughout the state patrolling those areas that have been evacuated to ensure that we don't have any theft or looting. Unfortunately, just a few hours ago, we had an incident in the Geyserville area, south of Cloverdale, where we had a couple of people enter an evacuation zone for no apparent reason. We believe that they were up to a criminal intent and that they were prowling or looking for crimes of opportunity. So we have deputies that were up there. They made an arrest, and we continue to investigate that. That is still an active criminal investigation. So we continue to look at repopulation. We're going to continue to look at it over the next few days as the fire weather forecast changes and wind conditions change. We understand that people really want to get back to their homes, check on their homes. We understand there's a lot of anxiety and some frustration out there, but we ask you please be patient, work with us. Our goal is to get you back in your homes as quickly as possible, and we are working very, very diligently to do so. So thank you for your cooperation and your patience, and we look forward to continuing to serve all of you. Thank you.